So, benefits committee was formed several months ago to try and address certain issues for membership. And then, of course, the coronavirus hit, and the focus of our benefits committee kind of changed a little bit. The purpose of this town hall meeting today is to try and give all of our members an opportunity to explore and ask questions about various options that are available for them to get relief, aid, or loans, some of which get paid back, some of which do not. And so we have a number of panelists that will talk about different issues today. It's important for all the members to realize that we're not offering legal advice. So anybody that really has a question about the legalities of this should either consult with their lawyer or certified public accountant. This is really informational based on stuff that we've learned and experiences that we've gone through in the context of applying for various relief. So I just want everybody to know that. Maureen, you want to say anything?
Hey guys, it's Joel here. I just wanted to chime in really quickly and for some more context to this. So again, the way that the Guild is operating is that we are organized with a board of directors, but several committees that are tasked with working on several different issues. And the benefits committee was formed for obviously trying to figure out how to help out music supervisors in our kind of unique positions and people who are really energized to try and help out. And it just so happened that this, came upon us. And this committee that you've got in front of you right now jumped in with both feet and has been aggressively going through all the morass of different links and advice and everything like that to figure it out. And while I think that we're not at a place where anything is necessarily figured out, we figured it would be better to get in early as soon as we possibly could to have this conversation while we can talk about our own kind of personal experiences kind of navigating this. So again, this is, like David said, this is not lawyerly advice or things to tell you what to do. This is, sharing experiences and trying to figure out how to do this all together. So, and I really appreciate this committee and everybody joining in this conversation. That's all I got to say.
Okay. We're very fortunate in that we have two people that have been very involved in terms of, helping us navigate some of this stuff. And one is from the Recording Academy, who is the Director of Government Relations in Washington, D.C., Michael Lewin. And he's going to kind of walk us through a great site that is interactive and is updated. And I'll hand it over to him, and then we'll go over Michelle Silverman is going to go through the unemployment process. And then Jacqueline, who is working very closely with SONA, that's the Songwriters of North America. And we were on a conference call yesterday. She was so great in going through all the small business loans, kind of what's available. And then we'll open it up to Q&A. So Michael, take it away.
All right. Thank you, Maureen. Thank you for having me today. Greetings from the East Coast. I'm outside of DC, working remotely as the Recording Academy is abiding by self-quarantine rules. So I'm in Virginia right now, but I hope everyone is doing well and staying safe and staying healthy going into this weekend. We're going to put the PowerPoint up first with the information on some of the CARES Act provisions. So the CARES Act passed 2 weeks ago today. It was signed into law by President Trump, and it has sort of 5 specific provisions that impact the greater music community at some point or the other. The first one that is universal, it's not just specific to music or the arts, are these stimulus checks. You probably have heard about them in the news. It's the $1,200 stimulus check that will be deposited to all individuals that earn up to $75,000 as a single filer, or a sliding scale if you earn more than $75,000 but less than $99,000, as well as additional funding if you file jointly or if you have minor children that are dependents, or if you're a single parent that has children in the household, you'll get additional funding. There's not much to say or do about this if you are eligible for this, except for one big thing, and that is to make sure that the IRS has your bank information set up for direct deposit. Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin said earlier this week that the first round of direct deposit checks will go out starting on Monday, this coming Monday, the 13th. The catch is that it might take some time, and by time I mean potentially months, for paper checks to be mailed out by the IRS, by Treasury, and be received to all Americans that are receiving paper checks. So double check to make sure that you have your direct deposit information up with irs.gov. Right now, the only way to do that is if you have filed taxes either this year or in the previous year, 2018. They are working though, and Maureen shared a link, an article about an hour ago, that the IRS is working on a sort of intermediate portal site that they'll be able to put up on irs.gov this month in April to allow people to put in their direct deposit without having to file taxes this year. Because of course, as you all know, the tax extension has been extended to, I believe, middle of July instead of April 15th. So that is something that, it's a nice assistance that will be very impactful for a lot of Americans. And it's a sliding scale. It's not a perfect system. Obviously, it's going to take some time to get all that money out, but it will make a difference for people in need right now. The second thing is actually the last thing on the list, and that is Congress passed a supplemental funding for the National Endowment for the Arts, the NEA, of $75 million as part of the CARES Act. This $75 million is earmarked for assistance for arts and arts groups affected by the coronavirus pandemic. 60% of it is set aside in direct grants for nonprofits. 40% is going to local, state, and regional arts organizations and councils. Of that 60%, the nonprofits, that's like your symphonies, your community theaters, orchestras. That money can be used to both pay offset costs due to loss of admissions in terms of salaries, utilities, rents for facilities. It cannot be used, though, in direct financial assistance to individual artists. The NEA is prohibited from giving out money directly to artists in the form of grants. They can, however, give it to an orchestra that then employs and is able to extend their contracts with musicians and people like that. There's also another catch in the erring on the side of efficiency and making sure that this money is distributed as quickly as possible and without any chance of fraud or misappropriation of dollars. The NEA and the White House agreed earlier this week to make sure that those nonprofit groups, the 60%, are past recipients, organizations that received NEA grants within the last 4 years, sort of a pre-approved process to make sure that they've already done the vetting on these organizations and have the assurance that these organizations will be able to take that money and use it for good and not use it frivolously. Now, those are sort of the two related things to music, but I think what most people, particularly in this call, are interested in are numbers 1, 2, and 3 on this PowerPoint slide. And I'm going to talk about number 1, and to do so, I'm going to take over the shared screen. So Maureen, if you could unshare it. Thank you. And I'm going to share my screen and bring up a website that many different music organizations, I'll scroll to the bottom so people can see the breadth of it, but the RIAA, the Recording Academy, SONA, NSAI, music publishers, more than 50, 60 groups came together to sort of put together musiccovidrelief.com. I encourage you all to bookmark it, to visit it now and tomorrow. It's sort of a clearinghouse, a one-stop shop to make sure that you get the information that you need about the CARES Act and how it applies to you as somebody as part of the music industry, the music creator community. It's got a lot of great resources, and it breaks down the legislation broadly, and then also step-by-step in terms of the pandemic unemployment insurance, as the SBA loans, and other sort of parts of the bill that benefit the music community. It's also a living website, so as new information comes online, we're posting it here. The groups are coming together to share resources and sort of collaborate, make sure that all information there is under one roof. It's got direct links to applications and forms for state-level stuff, as well as FAQs, sort of explainers, charts, everything that we could find to make sure it's a little bit easier to understand this very complex $2 trillion bill. But I'll start getting a little bit more involved on the unemployment insurance, the pandemic unemployment assistance, which was passed 2 weeks ago. By far, this is the most robust, most significant increase and expansion of unemployment in this nation's history. It not only expands the pool of eligibility of who's able to apply for unemployment, it expands the amount you're eligible to receive. It also expands the duration you're able to receive benefits. Starting with probably the most powerful point is the eligibility pool. Previously, under normal circumstances, unemployment was reserved for traditional workers, people that received a salary or hourly wages. They had a W-2, their employer paid into the state unemployment tax. That excluded basically many people in the music industry, any self-employed worker, any independent contractor, people that did freelance work, even some people that had a mixture of W-2s and 1099s, which sometimes left out of the ability to collect unemployment assistance. That changed with the passage of the CARES Act. As of now, pretty much any American worker, no matter how they get paid, is eligible to receive unemployment assistance if they are affected by the coronavirus pandemic. And that doesn't mean you necessarily have to be sick yourself or know someone that is sick. As long as the pandemic and the response to the pandemic, the closures, the cancellations, the shutdown of production has caused you to lose work or have reduction of hours or reduction of wages, you are likely eligible to receive pandemic unemployment assistance from the government, fully funded through the federal government from March or earlier to today to beyond. So that is a very big win and significant win for the music creator community. It gives you an extra level of protection. Even if you're still earning income in piecemeal, you might have one project that's still alive and you're able to generate some income, or you're doing some side lessons or side income streams, you're still able to collect unemployment if you have an overall reduction in the expected amount that you would have earned without the pandemic in place.
Michael, is there some way that you can tell people what kind of documentation or paperwork would be necessary to prove that you've been affected by COVID?
Sure, and that's a good point. So while it expands the eligibility, it is still being administered through your state. So each state, all 50 states, have their own systems in place. They have their own application systems in place, and they're going to require different information. But the federal government has assured everyone and assured the states in guidance this past weekend that it's pretty much just a self-certification process that you have to go through. How that will actually look will depend on the state, but in essence, you will self-certify that you are out of work or underworked because of the coronavirus. Here's your 1099, here's your W-2, here's past bank statements that show what you were earning or what you expected to earn. You could show contracts potentially of closed projects that you had committed to that would have paid X. It's really going to come down to the state-by-state implementation. So I can't give like a broad picture other than that the federal government has said it's a self-certified process. And really the burden, they don't expect there to be a lot of burden on the applicant. They don't want people to have to go through a lot of hoops and hurdles to make sure that they get paid. They want this money to be flowing as efficiently and as seamlessly as possible, but it will still be administered and adjudicated through the state process. Related to that, of course, is that certain states have different mechanisms in place and they're not quite all up to speed. Remember, this bill was passed 2 weeks ago. The ink is still drying. So it's possible and very likely that right now, if you were trying to apply, certainly I know Michelle will talk about California in a moment, but in states like California and many other states, their systems, their applications just are not up to speed to be in compliance with the CARES Act. They're working overtime, they're working extra hours to make sure they get in compliance, but it's likely that if you were to apply right now, today or tomorrow, you would run into roadblocks because the systems are just not designed to have application fields for self-employed workers or independent contractors. This is not a policy issue. This is really a IT issue. This is a programming issue. Once those systems get in place and they get up to speed and they have the manpower and resources, you'll be able to apply. And the good news is the federal government made sure that these buckets of funding are retroactive. So say you had a program, a contract in place, and you started losing work on March 5th because of the coronavirus. Even if you don't apply until today, it's still retroactive to March 5th. Even if California doesn't get up to speed until April 20th, it's still retroactive to March 5th. So we're really preaching, people to be patient here as systems get online, as applications get updated, and as this process gets ramped up to make sure that the government, the state governments are matching the needs of so many Americans and so many of these new eligibility classes of workers who are newly eligible to get unemployment. The two other things that the CARES Act did for unemployment was it expanded the amount that you're able to collect weekly, temporarily though. So in addition to your state's unemployment payout, each state has a different max level. I think California is a little bit over $400. Some states are as low as like $200 a week. And it's a sliding scale based off of what you've currently been earning and what you expected to earn. In addition to that, every American that applies and is eligible will receive $600 as a bonus, if you will, through July 31st, 2020. This $600 will not go up. It will not go down. It's not dependent on income. It's just $600 flat dollars that will go to all applicants and all recipients of unemployment from the time the bill is passed to July 31st. And again, that can be retroactive as well. So if you don't get your application approved till May 5th, you still will get the weekly $600 benefit on top of your state weekly unemployment checks up until July 31st. The third expansion is the duration. Typically, under normal circumstances, unemployment maxes out after about 26 weeks or 6 months that you're able to collect unemployment from the state. The federal government stepped in and they added an additional 13 weeks on top of that 26 weeks. So let's say you apply and you get 26 weeks, you need unemployment assistance for 26 weeks. Instead of maxing out and being out of luck, you now have an additional 13 weeks that you can collect additional unemployment. Again, that is fully funded from the federal government. Hopefully, the recovery from the coronavirus will be faster than that, but it is just sort of this extra assurance to make sure that projects, particularly in our industry where, the economy might be humming again in restaurants and other parts, offices, but in certain projects might be delayed, continue to be delayed. This will give you that sort of extra assurance that even if you exhaust your standard traditional unemployment, you'll have an additional 13 weeks to collect benefits as needed. So all that information, it's a lot, it's confusing. It's also confusing once you click around the different states. We try to make it as easy as we can, working with the RIAA and others on this website, musiccovidrelief.com. If you go to this sort of the second bullet here, how to receive unemployment, there's a step-by-step guide, FAQ that Sona put together. There's a flow chart that collects sort of the 6 key music states, California, Tennessee, Texas. But then there's also, if you click view more, it expands and shows sort of a PowerPoint slide that I talked about who's eligible and how it works broadly. This again, at the federal level, it's not state by state, but then there is the state by state information. All 50 states have information here, including direct links to the application process, to FAQs. If some states have already updated their CARES Act specific pages, it'll be linked here. Again, California, which Michelle will get into in a moment, all that information is here. And as I said at the start, this website will be updated as new stuff comes along. So certain states are a little bit slower than other states, but once they get their information to their applicants and to their citizens, we'll try to get it here as quickly as possible as well, so that you have sort of a one-stop shop to learn all you need to learn about how to apply and how to collect this sort of special pandemic unemployment assistance. I think that's all I have on unemployment. If we want to turn it to Michelle or move on to questions.
Yeah, any questions before we go to the unemployment page?
I had a question. I have a question.
Yeah.
Okay.
So a couple of questions is one, in 2018, I had over the above threshold to receive some of the benefits, but in 2019, I did not, and I'm just finishing my taxes. Is it too late to get my 2019 in and use that as a litmus for them to decide what benefits you get, or do they just, which tax return they get, 18 or 19?
My understanding is if you have your taxes in, they'll use whatever tax information they have that's up to date. So
Okay,
if you get in 2019, they'll go with 2019. If you haven't filed 2019, because now it's been extended, they'll go to 2018. That's my understanding.
Is there a cutoff date? If once you get the check, then once they look at 18, then that's what they looked at, even if you get 19 a week later? Do you have any idea on that?
Not really.
I can just say for unemployment, when I went to the page, which we'll get to, they asked to see if you qualify, they say just put in your, you know, your quarterly for 2019. So it's kind of like, you know, they're hoping that you're giving, you know, an estimate of the best correct response that you have
I didn't see that.
on taxes. I'm going to go to the page. I'll show you.
Okay.
Show you.
And then,
This page, I think they just added this where they go like, if you want to calculate what your thing is, they'll ask you, I think that's what it's been. Michelle will go through it.
Yeah, we're gonna go to the page for the
Okay.
new page. Just try to do you know, we're all laymen ourselves, so we're just trying to go through what
Okay.
I've seen going through the page.
Thank you. And then another couple of quick things. Were they looking if you 1099 people or not? Was that a decision maker if you had 1099 other people? And then there was a question with AB5 that was brought up to me where you could be red flagging people because there's all these fines and problems if you have 1099 people or been 1099 with the AB5 Act.
Michael, you talked about this yesterday. You want to chime in?
Yeah, I've heard rumors. I don't know how true they are that California is using this as a smokescreen to kind of sniff out companies that are not in compliance with AB5. I don't believe that is going to be the case once they actually have their systems up and running. I think it is more likely people are misinterpreting the language that was on the California's unemployment website, which has since been updated since we even had that call yesterday to have more dedicated information on self-employed and independent contractors and how they can apply to collect pandemic unemployment assistance.
Okay, thank you.
There are a bunch of questions in the chat, by the way, if I don't know who is reading that to answer those questions.
One other thing I wanted to mention to everybody, one of the reasons why the Benefits Committee was formed initially was to address this issue of music supervisors being employees versus independent contractors and the applicability of AB5 and whether there's a benefit or a drawback for supervisors to be considered in one category or another. It's the plan of the Benefits Committee to ultimately have another town hall meeting on the applicability of AB5 and how it affects music supervisors. So we did this town hall meeting today because of the urgency of the relief packages that were available. But everybody should know that we will be doing another town hall meeting on AB5 and the issue of independent contractor versus employee.
About 7 questions in the chat that we could get to now if you'd like.
Sure.
First one I see here is from Kristen Benson asking, should freelancers who bill through an LLC apply for UI or apply for the SBA grant, or can they apply for both?
You can apply for both. There's nothing preventing you from applying for both. But, and I'm sure Jacqueline will get into the SBA later, but you got to kind of have to do a calculation on what you think would be your best approach to get money and get money quickly as possible. The SBA loan would be protecting your paycheck. So in theory, you wouldn't be able to receive that and receive unemployment. And if you receive unemployment, it might affect your ability to get an SBA loan. So really, you're gonna have to look at your finances, look at what the calculations would be, and determine what best approach. But it's not like illegal to apply for both, but it would limit or preclude your ability to collect the full maximum benefit from either pool.
Great. Second question is from J.R. Regisford. Has the state of California updated their unemployment claims section to accommodate filing for gig workers yet? Last he checked, it was set up for W-2 workers.
I think Michelle might be getting to this next, but as of this morning, they had not updated the application itself.
No, but they do have, they have put on here who qualifies and independent. We'll go to this next. So it's a page where they actually put up things that, you know, affect how we qualify.
Great, thank you. And next is Lindsay Wolfington. Can you apply for both paycheck protection for business and for unemployment for a recent job? Those W-2, that sounds like kind of what you had answered previously.
Right.
Kristen Benson, many freelancers are still working through our hours reduced. How should we handle this section? There's a screenshot. I think this is probably going to be the next stage of this conversation. so we'll probably get to that. Maddie Madsen says, how to apply for loss of performance royalty income. We are
Nada. I mean, you should probably go for royalties in terms of song. She's a songwriter.
Maddie, are you a songwriter?
Publisher.
Yeah, so you should probably reach out to Sona specifically about that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I was just going to add, since I've been working with Sona, I mean, if you have an LLC, and you might qualify for the Paycheck protection program, even if you're an independent contractor, which I'll talk about a little bit. So if your income is dropped and your personal income is dropped as a result of all this, you may be able to get a loan.
Yeah, both will drop because I'm also a composer. I did apply for that too, by the way.
Good. Okay.
I just thought on the personal side, unemployment insurance might also for the projected impact there too.
Yeah, I mean, I think what Michael was saying is you can apply for both in a lot of situations, but to apply for unemployment, if you have a drop in your employment, I think that's what Michael was going through. You may qualify for that, but you can't then preserve your income under the loan apparatus. So you kind of have to make a decision about which may work best for you or what combination would work best.
Okay, thanks.
All right, next is from Leela Wilson. As an LLC, there's no real base rate with the $600 freelancer fee. Is the SBA loan to help compensate for the part of the loss?
So the SBA loans, I'm going to go through them in a bit, but they're not tied to the $600. The $600 increase is part of the unemployment package. So basically, as Michael explained, it's part of the expansion so that in addition to whatever your state would normally pay you, you're getting $600 extra a week through the end of July, I think it is. The loan program has to do with preserving payroll and being able to pay rent and so forth. So there's sort of two different buckets.
Great, thank you. And a bit of a follow-up on that. Okay, yeah, so I think from Brad Cheat says, so you can get the $600 and the $10,000 loan, or is it one or the other? But that should answer that. Michael Sherwood asks, does as yet unpaid invoices count as income at the time of the work done for purposes of unemployment insurance?
If you expected to earn a wage and that invoice is not paid yet, that would count as a reduction of your wages. So it should count as a purpose for your unemployment application. But that might be one of those unique questions where it's best to consult with a CPA.
Okay, I mean, to clarify, I'm saying that there are we have to prove our income prior to the COVID-19 pandemic coming into effect, and I'm just wondering at what point, does that income where does that income fall on the timeline?
It looks like from what I see when you're going backwards that you're going back to the year of 2019. So you're guesstimating what, like in the grid, it says January, how much did you make? February, you could make 10,000 in January because obviously you invoiced and you got a $10,000 check, and 0 in February. And then in March, that's still part of the same quarter. Let's say you made $2,500. They're gonna take the largest amount out of that quarter as a qualification. They should have, whether you've done your taxes or not. In general, anytime someone, and it gives you a 1099, they have to, give it to the government as well. So the state of California at some point is going to have what you've been paid on file. So they'll be able to double check by what you put in. So you should go back either to your tax returns or look at your 1099s that you've received for last year and basically input it based on what you received and go, oh, well, I remember on that project, I know I got my, this how much on January, this how much on February. That's what at least it looks like from what the calculator to see how you qualify. And since it's not set up yet to do the rest, they're still working on the page, but the initial page they set up now shows for independent contractors, which it didn't before, by estimate per month of what you received from last year, not this year. So it wouldn't be really just invoices, it would be really what you were 1099 for.
Right. The issue is I was freelance just as of the beginning or end of last year. So I don't really have a precedent.
Well, I think you just do the best you can. And I think it's a good time for Michelle to kind of go through the process. And from what, the Music COVID had said, and that we kind of surmise, is that the best thing is to apply, get in line, do your best, fill it out, and then they're going to sort everything else, but don't wait. And so, try to answer all the questions honestly, and then they'll deal with it. So I think it might be a good time, Michelle, to kind of walk through that process.
Sure, I'm looking for, so here's a screen. As of, I guess the last day or two, they obviously put up the pandemic unemployment assistance page where it goes down and you can see, review the eligibility requirements right here. Who's eligible? Business owners, self-employed individuals. See this, none of this was on as of like 2 days ago. Independent contractors, individuals who may qualify for regular UI benefits. Those are people who are like W-2, those are employees, but they also are now independent contractors. So these are the people now who are eligible, and you have to meet one of these following criteria. So have you been diagnosed with COVID-19? Are you unable to work because a healthcare provider advises you to self-quarantine? Are you a member of a household that's been diagnosed? Are you providing care for a family member who's been diagnosed? Do you have a child at home that you have responsibility for who cannot attend school? You became the breadwinner for the household as a direct result of COVID-19. You have to quit your job as a direct result of COVID-19. Your place of employment is closed as a COVID-19. You were scheduled to start a job and are now unavailable as a result of the public health emergency. You're unavailable to reach the place of employment as a direct result of COVID-19 public health emergency, or, which affects all of us, you're an independent contractor with reportable income. You may also qualify for if you are unemployed, partially employed, because of the COVID-19 public health emergency has severely limited your ability to continue performing your customary work activities. So that, I think, is really, at least when I look at this, for me, that's the thing that goes, okay, I feel like now I can apply. So then it says, so if you are unsure if you're an independent contractor or an employee who's eligible, file for unemployment benefits, which would be now. But right before that is the EDD is sorting through these details on how they want this complex program to work in issuing payments. So they're still, the page will be updated with instructions when it's available. So questions to people who are saying, should I do it now? Should I do it later? They're saying they haven't really built this thing yet, but if you're unsure whether you qualify as a W-2 or an independent, and you could be eligible, then you can file for regular unemployment insurance benefits. So I think, it kind of goes to Maureen, what you said, like, do you apply or do you not apply? I think there's pros and cons to both. I don't think there's any money for anybody who's applying early. I think it might I think it might be easier for people who apply once they see how, what they're going to put up, because it's going to be different than if you apply with their normal process. Where to file a claim. Anybody who hasn't, there's a UI benefits calculator to estimate how much you get weekly. And let's see if it takes me there. Okay, step one to the benefits calculator. So this is to see how much maybe I think I can get. What's the start of your claim? you can backdate, I believe, your claim to the date that Michael said, like the date that this all went, happened for everybody. So you put in your date. Then I get step 2. How much did I make quarterly? Again, going back to 2019. So I think, okay, I'm going to take out my 1099s I got last year and say, oh, I'm on this TV show. I'm just doing, and this, again, this is how I would do it. Everybody has a different plan, but I would take my TV show, The Mayans, and know that I got, paid in bulk installments. And I started that show. I remember, I know how much I made in the total, but I know I started that show in May, and I probably got my first payment in June. And I'm going to just guesstimate that. Let's just pretend that I made 20,000 total on the show. I think probably I got 5,000 payment in June. I'm going to put it in the calculator. In July, I probably got another 5,000 installment. In August, I probably got another 5,000 installment. And in September, I got my other 5,000 installment. I'm just making up numbers here. But and let's just say I didn't have another project in April, but I had some other project that maybe gave me maybe a full payment of $12,000. And then I'm thinking in February, I have another W-2 that said, oh, maybe I did a commercial and I got $2,500 to be creative on a commercial. Or I got in March, oh, I remember I have that project. I got 5,000 March. So I'm going to fill out. And then the other things maybe are 0, and this quarter 0. And this quarter, I know I did that movie that they just paid me a big lump sum, let's say of 20,000. And then I'm going to put in 0 and 0. And I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to go down, next step. It says I reported, my whole year was 200,000. I'm going to go back and say, oh my God, did I make 200,000? Maybe I made a mistake. If I made a mistake, I'm going to change the number. But let's just say that's whatever, I probably typed in something wrong. But let's just say that was it. It said I qualify for $450 for each, which is the most you can qualify for each 2 weeks. So then I'm going to say, wow, I really qualify. I'm going to go to claims. It says reopen an existing claim or file a new UI claim. I'm going to file a new claim because I've never done this before. So I'm going to look down. I looked at how to file a claim. We're going to go online because nobody's around. Nobody's going to answer my phone call. So UI online is the quickest way to apply. So I'm going to go to, I think here, file a claim. Wait, it sent me back. UI online, this kind of gets confusing. Benefits program online. Log in or register. You're going to have to, if you're a new register, but most people are going to newly register, so you're a new registration. Read through everything they say. I'm going to read all of this that I agree with all their terms. So again, this is just me walking you through. I agreed all the terms that they say, personally for me. And I'm going to create my username and password. Everyone's going to create their username and password. And because once you register, then you will be able to, which is in a separate area, which we log in with your email and your username and password. And when you log in, it is going to have you, after you create your username and password when you register, it's going to walk you through everything that you originally did with the numbers. It's going to ask you for your last employer. It's going to ask you for a contact for your last employer. It's going to ask you for all the different names of each job, which is why your 1099s, having it in front of you, is going to help, because you're going to have the name, the address, how long you worked for each employer, the estimate income you made from each employer. And then once you fill all of that out, you're going to file. And it's going to probably take 2 weeks, or maybe now, because everybody's filing, a month to hear back to see if you qualify and how much you qualify for.
And Michelle, there's going to be an important page when they ask you, why are you not working? And you should definitely mention that it's COVID.
Yes, there is a page that says, why are you not working? And there is a pull down. And at the time I wrote in COVID-19 disaster, but I believe now that there is a pull down that says COVID-19 for the reason you're not working.
I can show that page if you want, Michelle. Should I show that page?
Yeah, show that page. So I'm going to unshare, stop share, so you can share the page.
Right, I'll share this page, and you'll get an idea. So after, and like for me, when I applied, I just took, when I got paid and put that money in, you know what I mean? It just did the best. And they ask you, like, are you an independent contractor? And the answer is yes. So for right here, this is last employer information. So obviously this is not John Legend, but it would be basically like, it'll ask you, I was laid off, no work, and, related to the coronavirus, COVID-19. So that will be an important thing, because that will put you in a different, just so they know. That's kind of in connection with the independent contractor, and it's COVID since it's new.
And it brings up a residual question too. Just every week every week or two, when you have to write in, did I look for work? Did I qualify this week? Did I receive, they're going to ask you a question. Did you receive any money? And the weeks that you actually receive money, including any residual pay, are weeks that you would put in who you received the money for and how much you received the money for. And if it's over the $450 for that week or two, you will not receive unemployment for that week. So you have to, every 2 weeks certify for your benefits. So if you receive money on the weeks of those benefits, you need to tell them you received the money, and those weeks you do not get paid unemployment. And the most important thing too with unemployment, is obviously everyone's trying to still look for work during the course of being unemployed.
And I believe California, and you can get that on the California link that's on Music COVID, will tell you that you need to, at some point, even once you're approved, you need to register and post your resume on California jobs. So that is a requirement, and you have so many days to do it or whatever. But for myself, since I already applied, even though I don't even know if it was right or not, I'm going to go ahead and post it. So when they look at it, like, oh, she posted it on it, because it's just a requirement for them to do it, and it's just a book, housekeeping kind of a thing for them. And they want to know that if they can find a job for you or whatever, you're set to go.
You're ready, willing, available, and looking constantly for work. Yes.
Okay, good question.
Yeah.
When it says last employer, I was a little confused by that, because I have a lot of advertising agencies I do a project here and there for. So I don't know who, and I get money from CSAC for some TV shows, but I get all these 1099 from various places. But I'm really working for myself. It's for, I'm a sole proprietor. So do I just put me? Because I pay myself, I guess. I mean, the money goes to my company, and then I pay me, or who do I put there? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Michael, do you have any thoughts on that one?
It may go back to,
sorry, I was muted. I believe it'll be, California should be creating a new application that will be inclusive of all types of non-traditional employees like yourself. But it sounds like you pay yourself through an LLC, so you probably put yourself as the employer.
Yeah, well, I'm a sole proprietor, so I don't know.
And the link that Michelle started off with, that was the updated page. It did say businesses were eligible, or business owners were eligible to apply. So that might be the bucket that you fall under.
And that goes back to if you want unemployment or you want the PPP loan, payroll protection.
Which one do you?
So we're going to get into that. But in other words, you can't be on unemployment and get I believe, and Michael and Jacqueline can correct me, you can't get the payroll protection payment. That's through the Small Business Administration. So
and that's 10,000, the payroll protection. Is that one?
No, that's a different one. We'll get into that.
Okay.
We'll get into that next. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, there's some questions, and Michael, you can talk to this. And in addition to the $450 the state's giving you, you're going to get another $600 from federal. Is that correct?
600, yeah, the $600 runs from the date that the bill was signed, so March 27th until July 31st. So basically 16 weeks of $600, no matter your income, as long as you're collecting unemployment. That's a special one-time bonus that the federal government is giving every recipient of unemployment. The $450 a week, the max in California, goes as early February, and is continued up to 39 weeks. But you're only eligible to collect it if you are out of work. So if you were out of work February 1st because of the coronavirus, you'd be eligible for 39 weeks of $450 plus an additional 16 weeks of $600 sort of in the middle between early April and late July.
Okay.
I think once they update the site to be, I think the independent contractor, which is why I think none of us have gone unemployment as independent contractors. I think it's very difficult because we get paid in installments to manage a lot of these questions. And that's probably why it's going to take a little extra time to get the unemployment EDD site up and running to reflect how we can show, what we got paid for, why we weren't paid, or how we are working part-time, or how we are not collecting the full income or loss of wages based on what happened with the pandemic. So, clearly some people get paid money, but then if your show stops, you're not going to get paid what you were thinking you were going to get paid. It could put off the show for 9 months to a year, correct? And, I know we're all experiencing this. You could be on a show, get a first payment, which would probably go into, you're working in February, and then all of a sudden by March 14th, everything is stopped. And you, even though you were working on a show, and the show in theory is still eventually coming back, there is a period where everything has been postponed, and now you are, in theory, not receiving any money and are unemployed. I think that's a lot of people are in that situation, and they haven't set up the EDD to reflect that yet. Correct, Michael?
Correct.
And there's a question to say that applying for your state site will get you into the federal payment as well. Correct, Michael? So basically you would get $600 through whatever state unemployment office.
Yeah, it's the same sort of, it's all administered through the state. So you apply through the state and the check should come just on top. It won't be like separate checks as long as they do it efficiently. No guarantee there though. But this is just an additional federal funding on top of what the state is giving out.
Okay. So should we move on to the small business?
Sure.
Does that sound?
Yeah.
Thank you, Jacqueline. And thanks again, Sona, for all your work in this area.
Thank you for having me. And I'm just a poor copyright lawyer who's, been working with Sona and trying to sort through all this stuff. But this isn't legal advice, as David eloquently explained. But I want to share sort of the basics of how the loan and grant programs work. And a lot of this information, actually, I think all of it, you can also find on the COVID website. I'm gonna, maybe that's not, I'm not very adept at the sharing screen.
Do you want me to go on
that?
to PowerPoint just to kind of go through it there? Or?
Yeah, but I mean, I'm gonna do sort of yes, that would be helpful if you want to show that. But basically on the COVID website, if people, can you see that, what I'm doing? There's a lot of information, including, FA, here it is under small business. Sorry, I was in the wrong.
You have to go on the bottom of the screen and just share screen. That green button.
I thought I did that. Let me, you know what, I'm gonna, hold on. I'm going back to you, I think. Return to meeting. I think I'll just let you know that if you go to the COVID website, you can get a lot of this information, but I'm gonna go over it step by step so that you have a sense of what's there. The small business loans are administered by the SBA either directly or through banks. And so it's a federal program. And the way it works is for certain loans, which are the economic injury disaster loans, those are loans that have been around for a long time. They deal with sort of tornadoes and so forth. The federal government declares a disaster, and you can then apply to the SBA directly for a loan, or and now for COVID, a grant. The EIDL loans, as they're called, are, the form is pretty easy. If you go into the materials, you'll find, or go to the SBA website, you'll find a portal where you can apply directly. It's a pretty simple form, and you can apply for up to $2 million. As part of that, what the CARES Act did is they said, well, you can also at the same time request up to a $10,000 grant if you're applying for this emergency disaster loan. And by the way, the entire country has been declared a disaster, so everyone in every state, and DC is a bit, you're eligible for one of these disaster relief loans or grants. To get the $10,000 grant, you actually have to apply for the disaster relief loan, okay? And then, as I said, you make a request of up to $10,000. Now, that's the way the law is written. I think there's been a little bit of misunderstanding in the way this has been sort of discussed generally, which is it's not necessarily a $10,000 grant. The SBA doesn't have to give you that much money. It's up to the SBA how much they want to hand out. I think some of it depends on how many people apply and what funds they have available. If you apply for the loan and you ask for $10,000, I think what people are hearing back is they're tending to say, we're thinking $1,000 per employee. So if you're self-employed, you may get $1,000. That's still good money. If you get one of these grants, they're treated as an advance against the loan. You do not need to repay the part that's the quote advance. That's yours, regardless of whether you get the loan. So I would encourage anyone who has the patience to deal with the SBA website to apply for this, ask for the $10,000. And I'm told it's, just like everything, it's taking a long time for the government to get up and running and to administer all these programs. The SBA is it's a small agency, and until a few weeks ago, they weren't really, they were administering sort of standard programs, and suddenly they have all this new stuff, just like the unemployment, the states with the unemployment that they have to adapt to and get up to speed on. However, good to get in line. Absolutely, you should do that. And if you have been negatively or adversely affected by COVID, and ask for the grant and hope that you'll receive it. The rest of, if you get a bigger loan, a bigger disaster loan for your business, and by the way, if you're an independent contractor or self-employed, you're eligible for these, as well as small businesses. If you get a bigger one, the interest rate is, I think, 3.75% or something, and you have a while to pay it back. And again, the amount is at the discretion of the SBA. So that's the disaster relief loan part of the CARES Act. There's another sort of very important part of the CARES Act, which is called the Paycheck Protection Program, or PPP. You've probably heard a lot about this. That's not administered directly by the SBA. It's administered through participating banks. And there's been a lot of, and you're probably even seeing articles about the difficulties rolling out this process. Basically, Congress agreed, they set aside $350 billion for these loans. And the way the SBA small business loan system works is those funds are made available through banks. Most major banks are participating in this program. However, the big change is in the past, it was just businesses. Now the PPP loans are being made available, this is the good news, to self-employed people and independent contractors. And so just like in the unemployment context that we've heard a lot about, the banks have had to sort of ramp up, they have to change their forms, and so that people can apply based on, who are self-employed, can apply based on the type of information they have in terms of their payroll and so forth. But basically, the way the PPP program works, and the reason it may be very helpful to some of you, especially people who have LLCs or, you know, but including people who are independent contractors, is you look at your quote payroll costs for the last 12 months, and you figure out your average monthly payroll costs, which could be the amount that you were paying yourself. And then you multiply that by 2.5 times. And that's the maximum amount of the loan that you can get. And that loan is supposed to be used to maintain payroll mainly, and then maybe pay your rent and utilities. And if you use the loan, you're supposed to use the loan for that purpose, and assuming you do, to the extent that you're using it for those purposes, it is forgiven. It's forgivable. So if you go through the process and you get the loan, so 2.5 months of, your payroll, let's say you're paying out $10,000, maybe you have an employee, you're paying yourself, you're up to say $25,000. That part of the loan can be forgiven if you comply with the rules. So it's a very significant benefit, and it is open to self-employed people. The interest rate on these loans, first of all, there's a 6-month sort of deferral of repayment. I think there are 2-year repayment period, and the interest is 1%. So they're at a favorable rate. Now, if you got a disaster loan, let's say you got $1,000 under the other program, the direct program from SBA, that can be, or more, to the extent that it's not a grant, it can be rolled into your PPP loan and refinanced at a lower rate. So this is all really important, good news, and very, the music industry lobbied very hard to expand these programs to include people like you, people like songwriters. The less great news, as I said, is that there's been a lot of hitches in getting all this rolled out. Apart from the forms themselves, the banks, what I'm hearing is they tend to favor their own customers, so there is kind of a get in line issue here. And also just, making sure that the bank will consider your application. If you want to apply for one of these, definitely go to a bank where you have a banking relationship first. And hopefully they can help you. The first day, actually, for independent contractors and self-employed people to apply for the loans, it happens to be today. So if it's something you're interested in, I would go, try to spend time today or as soon as possible looking into where you can apply. But start with your own bank if you have, particularly a bank if you have an existing lending relationship. There are also the SBA website, and I think this is in our handout, has a link to where you can, it's called lender matching. Maybe they can help you find a bank. As I said, most of the large banks in theory are offering the loans, but I think one of the things here is, just like with the unemployment, you have to be very patient and to realize that process is unfolding. There have been a lot of kind of changes along the way. The Treasury Department is issuing more and more guidance as things move forward. And, a lot of people in the music community are actually pushing the SBA to try and, clarify and simplify the loan process for independent contractors and self-employed people. But, the money's there. Hopefully Congress will actually, there was a bill on the table that unfortunately didn't move forward to add more money to this pot for small business loans. We're hoping that happens down the road. But like all of this, all the loan and the grant stuff, I think it's very advantageous. The sooner you can get your information in there as best you can, the better chance you'll have of getting a loan or a grant.
Okay, I think there's some questions. Any questions? Do we want to get to some questions for?
Sure. We have a list of some outstanding questions here. First one, back to Christina Benson. Is the calculator just for our info so we can manage expectations, or do they use this to calculate and establish the benefit space?
This is based on the UI screen when we were looking at the UI.
Oh, yeah. The calculator is just for you kind of to figure out for yourself how much you think you qualify, or if you qualify, that's for you. When you get more specific into applying, it's going to ask very specific questions on how much money you receive from each employer. But that's how it was when it was set up for normal employers. I can't tell you now if they're changing the whole website when you get for independent contractors, if it's going to be different, and you'll just go use your 1099s and put in, your the amount that each employer, said that you made. So that's why if you apply now, you're gonna have to figure it out step by step on your own, and using your tax returns, looking at trying to, I think that they're probably going to readjust the way the form is in the next week or two to accommodate independent contractors.
They already have in New York. Just an FYI, they've done this already for 2 weeks. It's from the first day. So New York application is also the same as Texas. And as an LLC sole proprietor, they make you call in to finish your claim. That's where the bog down is now, because there's not enough people being able to answer the phone to figure out how your claims worked out. But the application is actually federal, and it asks for employers, for just past employers, and then they'll clarify it in the finishing process.
Right. So if you're waiting for, if we all have to wait for phone calls, and it's just gonna.
Well, you have to call in. And that's part of you have to call in anyways as a UI every week to say you're looking for work. And that's why the calling system is down. Google is supposed to be, according to Cuomo, Google is helping with this process, but the application is already there. And I've gone through it, and I know another person not in the music industry that is a sole proprietor LLC has gone through it, and it's exactly the same. And California was behind New York, talking to different people. So your application is probably for, if you're an LLC or sole proprietor, the way it's different from a W-9 is 1099 will ask for your past employers, and if you have them, and I'll ask you for partners and how you work. Because if, say, you're Etsy and you're still functioning, you therefore will not qualify. So that's how it's different. And then we are just told to keep calling, and there's different prompts on the automated system to say finish your claim. So that I believe that will be the same for California, and it will trickle through as each state gets set up properly.
Mm-hmm. So we're just gonna. It may take. In that instance, it may take 2-3 months, but everything will be back. Like what Michael said, you'll get your money. It'll be
retroactively
applied. Yeah.
It'll be retroactive, but they're telling us in New York, because this application was already on the 6th. It was same with small business loans, was already available on the 6th, and same in Texas. I just know that because I'm kind of a refugee of South by at the moment, and I am based in New York. So I'm able to, and I have a board here that I'm on, and they're doing the PPE, also SBA. So there's a lot of information going around, and unfortunately the states will catch up faster than the 2-3 months that's stating. They just have to figure out how to take these calls to see how each are qualifying. And California tax laws are much stricter on their individuals, but this is a federal application. So the federal guidelines are trying to be administered rather than a state. So let's say like your act that you guys talked about, H-1B and O-1 visas, the acts that prevent them to apply for UI are no longer enforced, and and federal government overrules those acts. So that those people can apply. So it will happen, and they're working on it. New York has been on it, and it's part of Cuomo's discussion every day when he does his talks. So I feel like California, because it's a freelance-based area, you will get there faster.
Well, another thing that people had asked questions, and I'm sure some people are wondering, when you do put in your last employer, some people's last employers are when, like certain movies and productions, the way that they set them up are from other states. So even though you're an independent contractor working in the state of California, if you are on a show that's based in Canada, let's say, they're going to have to figure out how to view that as well, because you know, that might be a Canadian company, but you're working and receiving money in the state of California. So
Yeah,
I'm sure
it's where you tax, where you sit and do your work is usually where it's based. You know, so that's, if you go to Canada to do the work, you have to pay taxes to Canada. And that's usually how tax laws are applicable. But it's really the breakdown of figuring out if you are a sole proprietor, LLC, and if you can claim as if you're an individual. And that's a problem with also the base rate, because a lot of sole proprietors, LLCs, cannot get this $500, $400 state base rate. And that might be where the SBA loans might supplement that fee with the 10K. And it's a lot of administration that they're trying to figure out, but because freelance is new and the federal government is supplementing it, the guidelines are just being learned and taught. But it should be a faster process because of the demand, mainly because of New York and California, and New York being such a hot spot and highly in trouble right now, it will come through. I'm already administering info. As soon as I find out, I can let the guild know too. But if New York, because New York system's been set up way before.
that's great. Thank you so much for all that great information.
No problem. Thank you.
Two last questions here, I think, before we can get back in, and they're both related. If there's a change that needs to be made on an application, is there a way to do that, given the volume of people that are applying right now? And then specifically for the SBA loan, if there's a correction needed, does anyone know how to contact them?
Well, on the SBA loans, as I said, most of them, the PPP loans are administered by the bank. So the banks have, sort of choose their own way to have you apply, and then they turn around and they have to send the information for approval to the SBA. So if there's something that's changing on your bank application, you would need to contact the bank. For the disaster loans, I haven't seen anything about that on their site, but so what I would do is, maybe send if you have an issue with the loan form. As I said, those loan forms are pretty simple. I mean, they're pretty much, I think it's a one pager. They aren't that hard to go through. But if you have a question, you would probably have to, or need to make a change, you would probably have to contact the SBA.
Great. And then back to Christina Benson.
Hey, so I logged into the EDD site so I could just see what the application looked like, since it looked like they changed it a little bit since last I looked at it. The first thing that happened is what Michelle just talked about. My last employer came up as someone I did consulting work for, and they W-2'd me. But then it turns out if you select them as your last employer, EDD will contact them to verify that you're getting unemployment insurance through them. So I figure that that's wrong, and you should cancel them out and not put them in there. But then what happens is it says, okay, we'll put in who your last employer was. If we're an LLC, you can't necessarily just put in yourself, like if you built through an LLC, unless you have an employer number. So do we skip that and say we don't have an employer, or anyone have any insights on that?
I think you're going to have to do it one way or the other, like do it more traditional and put in the last employer. So, and see if they do contact the last employer just to verify you worked for them, or you may have to wait until they change the way the website is, because you're not fitting into the way that their system is at the moment.
I'm thinking that might be the answer for a lot of us, because it literally says, if you're a self-employed or independent contractor, you cannot be listed as your last employer. You must provide your last W-2 employer. And if you were a supervisor for a production in Georgia or something that happened to W-2 you, and then they go contact them, and maybe you're hoping to work for them again, I don't know. I mean, it might be fine, but it might not be the best situation. So I guess.
If you're W-2'd, by the way, you get, they pay in it doesn't go against the employer if you want unemployment. Every company has to pay into the unemployment. If you're an employee, every company pays into unemployment. And the people that they go to, which is human resources, do not talk to your employer. So it's not like, oh, this person's asking for unemployment. They go to human resource, the human resource department, or their pool is the one that just verifies that they had you in their system. So that's a benefit you get if you're, as an employee. A different thing is if you are a true independent contractor and you're being 1099, you're not going to be in their system because they're not paying in for you. So that's going to kick you out anyways. So when they go to verify, you're not in the system because you're not someone on the name that they're paying in for. And that's why it says on the form that in the next week or two that they're going to be updating it to probably fit who we are and how we can get paid, which goes back to that it's the federal government supplementing unemployment so we can get unemployment insurance, because no one's paying in for independent contractors at the moment. The state doesn't have money for us to pay us unemployment, if I'm correct.
Got it.
I have a question.
I think there's a next question.
Oh,
Is there
yeah.
a question on this from
There's
Burgundy?
that question here from Amanda Thomas. Is it possible to define loan forgiveness? The rules are pretty clear on loan forgiven, but what does that look like in practice? How does that actually work?
Right. So there's sort of two kinds of loan forgiveness. One is the sort of the grant that I talked about. If you happen to get a grant as under a disaster loan, whether it's 1,000 or 10,000, that part it's forgiven in the sense that you don't have to repay it. So that's, you're supposed to use the money to keep your business running or whatever. But apart from that, the money is kind of found money from the federal government. On the PPP side, it's more complicated. Basically, when you borrow the money, as I mentioned, the amount of the loan is calculated based on your payroll costs, and most of that is, the idea, the sort of idea behind the whole program is so that you'll keep your employees on your payroll and continue to pay them, right? So the government's saying, okay, you can get this money; it's a low loan rate. And then you do need to spend it on payroll costs. In other words, you have to continue paying people to get the forgiveness. If you actually then lay people off, your forgiveness amount goes down. But basically what's forgiven is the cost of paying people and their benefits, rent and utilities, and then interest on, say, a mortgage payment. After the law passed, the Treasury Department, the SBA, came out and said, well, those are the categories, but we're going to limit the forgiveness. 75% of it has to be actually compensation to employees, and 25% could be the other stuff like rent. So they just kind of grafted that onto the CARES Act, rightly or wrongly. But so basically you have to be using 75% of the money to pay employees. If you do that though, for the 8-week, the period that's covered, the 2-month period that's covered, that amount will be forgiven from your loan. If you've rolled an EIDL loan into your PPP loan, let's say you got a disaster loan for $5,000, that's refinanced in $1,000 is an actual grant. That grant amount is also deducted from the forgiveness amount. But it's, if you think about it, just sort of, this is, if you're running, this is why there's a question about, unemployment versus this program. If you're self-employed, you have an LLC, and you want to continue paying yourself, this may be a better option because down the road that can be forgiven. There's one more really important piece of information in terms of the way this works under PPP, which is the allowable payroll costs are not more than $100,000 per employee. So they're capped. So if you're normally paying yourself, say $150,000, you can only claim $100,000 for your loan amount, and only that $100,000 would be forgiven. So hopefully that explains it a little bit in a little bit more detail.
So with the PPP, you could get up to 100,000 forgiven?
Well, you can get more than that. It's your pay. Let's say you're running a small company and your monthly payroll cost is $10,000. So you multiply that by 2.5. So that's $25,000. And if you're using all that to pay employees, including yourself, you can get all that forgiven, but with the caveat that the cap on what you can be paying employees is, for forgiveness purposes, is 100,000. In other words, if you're paying an employee 200,000, you have to exclude 100,000 when you're calculating the amount of the loan you can take, and then it will also be excluded from the forgiveness amount. I mean, obviously the idea here is to keep, as many people employed as possible and not, at super high levels. It's about paying people who need steady income, but not extravagant.
I just went through that. So basically my accountant said, if you can assume that you generally make over 100,000, so let's just start at the 100,000, you divide that by 52, your weekly pay is $8,333. Then you multiply that by 2.5, and that's what you can apply for. And then if you have any employees, you can also do the same kind of math.
Yeah, it's the month. That's exactly right. I think it's the monthly. It's the monthly pay, so it would be the 8,300 times 2.5. So if you have employees who are making more than 100,000, that's the max you can put in for. That's right.
Kind of a specific question from Burgundy Morgan. If 100% of the money is used to pay employees within the 8-week period, then is 100% of the PPP amount forgiven?
It should be, yes. If you should obviously look, closely at the rules or the loan application, but that's the idea. If you're using all that money to pay employees and say you don't have any rent, I think all that should be forgiven up to actually 75%. I think the way the Treasury Department rule works is no more than 25% can go to other costs. So I believe all that would be forgiven, but I think you might want to look carefully at the rule and make sure your CPA agrees.
So I just also want to emphasize that the music COVID website, all that information is going to be updated. So just in terms of just going to one place to see like what's happened in the California, or is making sure, if you need to get your direct deposit set up or whatever, that should have the latest information. And then, of course, the benefits committee will still be tracking it, and the guild will push on any other information that we need. But we've kind of wrapped up the presentation right now. I don't think if there's any other questions or concerns or anything that we can address, or just kind of give you whatever information we have now, we're happy to do it.
I had a question. If you when I get 1099, sometimes that isn't just my payment. That also includes hard costs, whether it might be song I have to pay for licensing or musicians or whatever. So they just give me one check to cover everything, and they give me a 1099. So it's not really all income. So is that a good thing or bad thing, or how does that work? They'll just pay me a flat cost, and then I pay whatever the expenses are out of it, and they give me a 1099.
I think you need to talk to your accountant. I think the 1099 is based on income. So if you're getting paid like that, you might have to pay. I mean, in other words, that may be included in your income, even though you're paying costs out of it. I wouldn't, I don't know. Does anybody else know that? Or is that really an accountant or tax professional question?
That goes along with the cash accrual. This is Lila again. That goes along. It's an accounting question, but it does go along with the lines of business doing cash accrual accounting versus accrual versus cash accounting. And I had the same thing with the 1099, and I'm dealing with that with the New York process. I think that's with the when they go over what you do and how you make. The thing is that those deductions are obviously on our taxes usually, and doesn't show up as income, and it's something they have to take into account. Now that's why difference from W-9 to 1099 and applying for all this, and how they have to calculate it is still questionable. And I'm calling nonstop. I'll call weekend. I will try to get that information. to all of you guys ASAP, because I feel like New York will be faster with it and understanding, because since they've done it, they're doing it. But who knows? I'm also in touch with Wisconsin, Texas, all different states with different people. But that is a huge part of also possibly the base rate of unemployment, because technically you can't qualify under 1099 for that base rate. And that's why the 600 supplemental is made, and possibly the 10,000 SBA loan. So to say that one will wipe out the other is not necessarily clear, because if you don't qualify for your state's 400, 500 base rate, then you're getting screwed. And you have to make up for that money somehow. And that's why those two are out there. And it is an accounting question. I don't know if everybody has the answers, because the government has not supplied those answers. But your deductions should be part of the process, and to be ignored would be to ignore the whole counting system. So I would say just be patient right now. Try to work through your application. I will try to get answers. If I get through, I'm also talking to a bunch of different people in different areas of business, and it's all the same in the end. But the answer should be the same in the end, basically. And I'll supply that as soon as I can.
Thank you.
Michael, I have a question for you. So basically, and this is what was said on the COVID, music COVID, is basically to apply for everyone's scrambling to get this done. So there is going to be a drag time, but I think it is important to get in line to basically be there. So at some point, what I think is unemployment's going to call you, they're going to go through it. They'll say yes, no, blah, 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 or the small business loan will call you and say, well, we think you qualify for that. And then you'll be able to go through all this stuff. But if you're not applying and waiting, you can wait. But like the small business loans and things like that, that's a limited fund. It's first come, first serve. Not true with unemployment, but it's just, as everyone's trying to figure this all out, I think I think there will be some forgiveness in terms of, like, if you do it wrong, they'll be like, okay, obviously it was confusing. You can't do this. So, I did that too. Oh, okay, well, I'll rescind that now. I mean, I just can't imagine it not working any other way, because so many people are trying to catch up with it. Is that fair, Michael?
I think that's fair. I mean, it goes back. This bill is 2 weeks old. These rules and regulations the guidance came out days ago for unemployment. They've been being updated by the SBA, has been updating their loan stuff to banks like every day, every hour, as more questions come in. Everyone's kind of learning on the same pace here, and it's all happening very rapidly. And if you look at just unemployment, I mean, 16 million Americans are filing at the same time right now. It's going to take a while to get that sort of process and get everyone into the systems. So even if you're able to only half file or do a partial application and you get your ID code from the state unemployment office, that's a minor victory, because it will be something that you can go point back to. And at some point, ideally, there would be a caseworker or someone that you could work with and sort of, talk your application through. But that might take more than just a week or so.
So, I mean, they're really trying to protect against fraud. So if your intention is not to defraud the government or the system, and it's honest and you're trying to do the best thing, I don't think they're going to go after people because, oh, you didn't fill this out correctly, or, oh, you should have done this. It's like, okay, well, everyone's figuring it out on the fly. So,
Hey guys, this is Joel here. I wanted to do a little housekeeping before everybody kind of signs off and stuff. So the Guild has set up a Zoom account so we can do more of these kind of town halls, and we're going to try and keep everybody informed about information. We're going to be doing continuing panels that people can log on to and see, discussions about what's going on and stuff, but also really informative things like this panel, other things that'll be really helpful. So kind of stay tuned. We appreciate the membership and everything like that. This panel is being recorded, and you probably see that up in your thing. So this is being recorded, and we can discuss if this is something that we can make available online for people to go back and reference. But all of the resources that have been brought up on screen shares and have been forwarded through are going to be available on the Guild's website and stuff. So, hopefully we'll kind of keep the discussion going and keep bringing you more information as it develops. And I wanted to thank everybody for giving up their time and really pitching in to help their their peers on this. So it's really important, and I really, really applaud it.
Thank you, Joel.
Yeah.
And I'd also plug that earlier this week on Monday, the Recording Academy, we hosted a webinar on the SBA and the unemployment stuff. Whether you're a member or not, it's available on our Facebook page. It was Facebook Live, so if you just go to facebook.com/Recording Academy, I think it's the top video still up there. It had like 20,000 views. It had 2 experts on SBA and unemployment insurance, so it gets a little bit more into the weeds than we were able to cover today.
Thank you, Michael. That was great.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Stay safe.
Thanks all. Be well.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye,
you,
y'all.
Joel.
Thank you, guys.
you.